turn for grace. It's a beautiful day.
806 Need to Know Morning Show on AM 1100 The Flag. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Don't forget, if you're going to be dining out this weekend at all, if you need some work done on your car, maybe you want to put in an Astro Start, warm that car up this winter, no better place to save money on all of those things than by going to am1100theflag.com and click on Big Deals. There's some really fun stuff on there, and you'll save big on a lot of things that you're probably going to do already. Eating out, shopping, car, healthcare, all kinds of good stuff there. Deals at 30, 40, even 50% off. Check it out, the Big Deals page at am1100theflag.com. It's 8:06, and if you got a comment on anything that we're talking about as we go through the program today, we would love to hear from you. You can call us at 701-271-1100, 701-271-1100. That's the Consolidated Communications phone line. Make them your partner for voice, data, and internet solutions. You can also email us at the True IT inbox. True IT will save you time, money, and expand your profit potential. studio@flagfamily.com is the email address, studio@flagfamily.com. Pleased to have in studio this morning Raheem Williams, and Raheem is an economist and the policy director for North Dakota Young Republicans. He wrote a column for the Forum. He does that on a fairly regular basis, and I just about stood up and cheered when I was reading the column in the Forum on Sunday, and I said, I've got to have this guy in. He sounds like our kind of guy. So he was thankfully good enough to come over for a few minutes this morning and hang out with us. Raheem, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming over today.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So tell me a little bit about your background, first of all, so we can kind of find out who the Raheem Williams is. You grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. You studied in Detroit, later in Miami. Now you found yourself here in North Dakota. Tell me a little bit about your path and how you came to be a conservative as you moved through your days.
Well, I mean, my path is, how do you say this, is unique. I studied economics, and that kind of started my transition into conservatism, because the Republican Party is the only one that even gives lip service to market reforms. As we noticed, the left has gone increasingly left and more towards control, and I think that's bad for our country. Nonetheless, I personally understood and became more of a conservative as I looked around at my life. And I grew up very, very poor. And my family, as my mother, she got married. My stepfather came into our lives. It's his birthday, so happy birthday.
Hey, happy birthday, Dad.
And our family started to prosper. It wasn't welfare and handouts that created that prosperity. My parents worked very hard to create a life for me and my siblings. And my stepdad, he didn't even have to do it. He basically took on that challenge. And I'm very thankful for that. So I understand that family values is what built this country. And that's not just abstract or anecdotal. There's plenty of empirical research that supports that as well.
Okay. So as you just kind of examined the real world and how things really were, you said this is the way to go. Do you find yourself, I find myself frustrated with Republicans, though, still too many times, because you said at least give lip service to it, but sometimes it seems like that's all there is.
That's unfortunate, and that's kind of what the North Dakota Young Republicans are about. We're trying to basically hold the party accountable to those principles and enact those in reality. So as we know, our national debt is out of control, and I can't understand even why our legislators keep going to D.C. and voting for these outrageous spending bills. And they're really, really, really selling out our kids and our grandkids, and it's just getting ugly.
So tell me a little bit about, you said North Dakota Young Republicans is really trying to kind of turn that around. And I think it says that somewhere in the good book, a child shall lead them. Well, but we need some leadership, and it doesn't matter where it comes from. Even the young ones can maybe provide some leadership. How are you trying to do that and get that message out to young people on campuses where it seems like liberal ideas really seem to take root and people don't think about the things that you're talking about?
Well, a big thing we do is we engage them through social media. So our social media page has been extraordinarily successful in reaching young people and challenging some of these, I guess what you could call postmodern norms. Mm-hmm. And that's one way we do it. We also hold events, and we have our convention coming up, I believe, November the 15th. It's in Bismarck.
Okay.
So we try to, what I go around the state saying is, hey, send us your young. let us red pill them. let us have our way with them. And if you see your child or your youngster drifting away, as many do, especially in undergrad, call us in. We're somewhat of an intervention specialist.
Okay.
That's what we do.
Okay.
Nice.
I like it.
Out
That's
there
funny.
doing some rescue work. Very good.
Get started early. What are I'm guessing you have some pretty good experiences where you just explain like how things really are and give people the simple facts of why conservative ideas work. I'm guessing you see some light bulbs come on at a fairly regular basis.
I mean, everybody has their own different questions, their own scenarios, and things they like. Like, not every conservative or Republican or however you want to describe the right is 100% in agreement with everybody on the right. So what you have to do is you have to figure out, like, okay, so what matters most to you? And for most of us, that comes down to family. And if you can basically tie those ideas, especially family and economic prosperity together, then the picture becomes a lot clearer.
And then there's just no argument. I mean, 1, 2, 3 questions deep into doing the math or looking at what you really want and what are your goals in your life, none of the stuff on the left seems to hold up on any of it. Really.
It's fairly easy to expose. And that's,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No
Love
question about it. And you talked about coming from a background where you didn't have much. I think one of the things the Republican Party has not done very well is to say, this is what we're all about. We're all about everybody in the country having a chance to aspire to something amazing. And I don't hear that message come out very often.
Well, partly that doesn't happen because we have a media that is extraordinarily slanted against us. But I hear that from our president all the time. He just had the 2nd annual Black Leadership Summit, which I couldn't attend, but I was invited to. And he goes out there in a room full of young African Americans like myself, and he says, hey, you can be president too. I want to see you prosper. The media will never show that.
No.
They're not going to play that on CNN.
Racist! Racist!
Do you think the ideas of conservative principles and maybe the ideas of the president, although some of his fiscal policy isn't always very conservative sometimes, but do you think that his ideas and what Republicans are trying to do for the most part are catching on in the Black community these days? We see the numbers that African Americans continue to vote Democrat most of the time, but do you think that's starting to change?
Well, for that to actually change, and I do believe, I wrote an article basically destroying the idea that Trump is a racist and pointing out all the great things he's done for the Black community. Historic HBCU funding, that's historical Black colleges and universities, the First Step Act, criminal justice reform, that's high on the list of priorities in our urban communities especially. So, and it doesn't stop there. Also urban renewal and investment. Mm-hmm. All these things just start to add up. And what you see is, I want the president himself to trumpet those. He needs to run on those. He needs to go to Philadelphia. He needs to go to Pittsburgh. He needs to go to Chicago. He needs to go to Detroit. And he says, hey, they're lying to you, because they are, and expose them.
And Kanye West is a voice for that in the Black community. And whenever he says anything, the left tries to shut him down and say, oh, he's crazy. He's got mental illness, blah, blah. Don't listen to him. But he is making some headways, I think. People are listening.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of voices out there. I love Kanye, but he's a little unpredictable.
Well, there's that. Well, there's Diamond and Silk. There's, what's the gal with the website and stuff? She's on Fox.
Candace Owens.
Candace,
Yes.
yep.
Oh, yes. She is fabulous.
Yeah, she's fantastic. So you wrote a column about the wealth tax, and I think you did a nice job of not just saying here's why I don't like the idea, but you actually went back into Europe and took a look at some places where a high wealth tax had been imposed. And you see some of these ideas, 95, 97% tax on the highest income Americans. Mm-hmm. And I shake my head and I say, in what world, in what universe could this be an idea that somebody's floating as even a fringe candidate? But you see major candidates on the left that are saying that we want these kind of things. Tell us a little bit about what people should know about a wealth tax and why you believe it wouldn't work.
Okay, so a wealth tax is basically like a property tax, but on everything you own. That's the basic concept there. And the reason property taxes work well, we all hate them, but they work well, is because you can't move your house. But that's not really true with other forms of wealth. Like, you don't have to own stocks in this country. You can have them in offshore accounts. Mm-hmm. You can have all kinds of, securities, debt securities, retirement accounts that aren't registered in this country. And so it's fairly easy for people of massive wealth, which is how Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos hold most of their wealth in stocks, to just not register them here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not hard at all for them to move them overseas to avoid this tax. It's almost something that can be done in a day.
Yeah.
So like the idea that you're going to hit them is insane, and it didn't work in Europe. We have evidence from France where it cost them 0.2% GDP, and that's not trivial. You need 2% for your economy to double every 36 years. You have like the rule of 72. And what GDP means is, even though it's not a perfect indicator, it's a pretty strong correlation between literally your life expectancies, health outcomes, education outcomes, the quality of life for everybody. So if GDP stops growing, that's an issue. And it didn't work for the French. It didn't work for the Swedish. It didn't work for our Norwegian friends. It didn't work in the UK. It didn't work in Germany. And socialists don't want to hear this. I got ripped apart for that column, not because I was lying to them. They weren't ready for the truth. And these people are delusional, and they shouldn't come anywhere near our economy.
Man, you are dropping some truth, my man.
Yes.
Absolutely. Spot on.
I want to ask you about one part of your column. It says this: the ultimate paradox is that taxes on wealth won't stop at just discouraging wealth accumulation. It will also discourage wealth creation, inevitably leading to less wealth to redistribute in the long run. I believe that to be true. I have, however, had this argument with some liberal members of my family who say, no, you're wrong, and here's why. People that are wired to be achievers and the makers and the growers, you are, and they say, like you've got a company, whatever, but you're still going to do what you're going to do. You're not going to be discouraged because there's a wealth tax. You're still going to keep doing it. So they say that it's a fallacy to say that people that are achievers and want to grow and do things, that they're not going to do what they do because there's going to be something still within you that burns to do that. Do you think that that's a legitimate argument?
I mean, I believe so, but we need to understand that why do people achieve anything? It's like when you argue that some people are hardwired to be achievers and to go out and get things done. I don't believe these are contradictory ideas here. The reason I say that is because what exactly is that high they get from accomplishment? And that's the incentive. That's the money. That's the notoriety and stuff. So if you take that away, then they have a lot less to go for.
Yeah.
And so it's like, why would you take away opportunity? That's what they're trying to get after.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't punish that. And the biggest thing about this is there's also this fixed pie fallacy in which I'm magically poorer because Jeff Bezos has money.
Yes.
The more funny thing, and I left this out of here, I'm going to kind of come up with a part 2 to this because I'm not done going.
I love this, man. Can I just say this right now?
I'm right with you, man.
This is the best 15 minutes we've had on this show in forever.
So one of the big things is it's not actually redistributive. Like the wealth tax doesn't actually make the middle class richer. And when they tried it, it's like that didn't stop income inequality in Europe. It still grew over that same time period. It didn't actually help the middle class. So this idea that you're gonna make the middle class, I guess we can quote President Calvin Coolidge. It's like you don't build up the weak by pulling down the strong. Mm-hmm. It's like it doesn't work that way. So there's 2 myths going on here, and the biggest one is that for me to be successful, somebody else has to lose. Like we have a competitive economy, but we have plenty of opportunity. There's jobs I didn't get, and I'm better off for it.
Yeah.
So it's like that's okay. It's like you just go back out there and you build and blaze your own path.
Yeah. It drives me nuts when I hear about the wealth gap and that the rich are getting richer. And then you hear the poor are getting poorer, but the poor aren't getting poorer in our society. And just because on the top end there's an expansion doesn't necessarily mean you're punishing anyone on the back end. On the bottom end, you've got maybe a growing gap, but shouldn't that be good news to all of us who think, okay, maybe someday if I hit it big, I can get a higher rung on that ladder. Yep. It's all this class warfare that drives me crazy.
That's exactly what my buddy says too. He's very successful, lives in Phoenix. He talks about this all the time. He's a color and race, none of that. If you want it and you want to go get it, this is the country to get it done in. You can go get it, go do it, do the work, and make it and earn it.
Get a hand up, not a hand out.
And if you don't want to earn it, well, then you might want to think about somewhere else. Just saying.
Yeah.
So on the inequality issue, what you discover and find out is when you look at America, our bottom 10% of income earners live better than 80% of the world's population.
Isn't that something?
That's true. The top 1%, to be in the top 1% of global income earners, you only need to make about $38,000 to $40,000 a year. That's almost most of America is the top 1%. We are the global elite. A lot of people.
Hold on a second now. What now? To be in the top 1% of the global elite, you need to make $40,000?
Basically.
Okay, so
I'm
when they say a
considered
tax on the
global
1%, you better know what that means.
If it's a global tax, which some of these crazy economists like Thomas Piketty has thrown out there, they're talking about your money. They're talking about your money, and they want you to feel bad that poor people exist.
Yep, that's right. Raheem, this has been a ton of fun. Thanks for coming back. Hope you'll come visit us again sometime. Really good stuff. Thanks for making some time for us this morning.
Thanks for having me on.
Raheem Williams joining us here on the Need to Know Morning Show. He is the policy director